meantime, I will call this regular meeting of Council of the Municipality of Jasper to order for September 24th, 2024. Councillors, you have today's proposed agenda, which is mercifully short, but I am going to anticipate there will be some changes to that. Are there any additions, deletions, or other changes to be made to the agenda? Councillor Hall.
Thank you, Mayor Ireland, and good morning, everyone. If I could, I'd like to please add agenda item 5.3, report from administration around debris removal.
Thank you for that, Councillor Hall. Mr. Given.
Your Worship, administration would like to add a closed session related to a land matter.
All right, we could potentially add that as 9.2 if we call upcoming events 9.1, 9.2 in-camera land matter, with the appropriate reference to the appropriate section of the FOIP legislation. Any other changes to today's agenda from any councillor or administration? If not, then may I have a motion, please, to amend today's agenda with the inclusion of item 5.3, report on debris removal, and 9.2, an in-camera matter related to land. Councillor Hall, thank you for that. All those in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried. And may I have a motion then to approve the agenda for today's meeting as amended? Councillor Waxer, thank you for that. All in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried. That takes us to agenda item 3, approval of minutes. We have before us the minutes of the regular meeting of September 17th, 2024. Are there any errors, omissions, or corrections required to be made to those minutes? If not, may I have a motion, please, to approve the minutes of the September 17th, 2024 regular meeting as presented? Thank you, Councillor Keller-Hempe. All in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried. Not on the agenda, but I would invite any councillors, if there's any business arising from those minutes, to raise it now. Seeing nothing, we can move to agenda item 4, correspondence, of which there is none on the agenda. And Mr. Given, I presume you would confirm if there was something new that has come in. So I will assume again that there is nothing, and I see the shake of the head. Takes us to new business, agenda item 5.1, amendment to recovery effort positions. Mr. Given.
Your Worship, thank you. I'll speak to this one. Administration is recommending that Council amend a previously approved motion. That's motion 371/24. It really is a matter of administration not exactly capturing Council's intent with the motion. We understood that Council's intent was actually to add a dedicated small business recovery coordinator position. Previously, the minutes had recorded that as that function being included in the housing, in the information officer and business liaison position. So administration, in reviewing that, and as noted by the delegation from the Chamber of Commerce last week that was asking for dedicated resource, sort of caught us off guard when we looked at it. Mr. Butler was correct. That was recorded as being that function being included in another position, when administration's perspective and recollection from the meeting was that Council's intent was in fact to add a additional position dedicated to just that small business function. So we're here recommending today that Council amend that motion from the previous meeting, and we've got a recommendation in front of you.
Thank you, Mr. Given. Are there any questions of councillors directed toward Mr. Given or administration? If there is not, is there a councillor prepared to make the motion to approve the amendment to the recovery effort positions? Councillor Wilson?
Yes, I would make that motion.
Thank you for that. Is there any debate? Does any councillor wish to speak to the motion? All right, so I think it all agree. It's just a housekeeping matter. I will call the question. All those in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried. That takes us to agenda item 5.2, additional recovery positions. Again, I would look first to Mr. Given, but perhaps Director Reid is addressing that.
Your Worship, I believe Director Reid and Director Fark will perhaps jointly be sharing this. Apologies to Council as well. This report was emailed out over the course of the weekend. Again, an example of how quickly things are moving. We knew that this needed to be on the agenda, but we weren't able to produce the documentation until over the weekend. And so with our apologies, Directors Reid and Fark will introduce the topic and present to Council, looking for your approval for some additional support positions for recovery. Director Reid.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Given, and again, I will echo the thanks to Mayor and Council for letting us get this fast moving item in front of you. So the item before you is additional recovery positions, and the recommendation is that Council approve the establishment of the following additional positions to support the social economic recovery effort. And that's 2 full-time recovery outreach workers on a 2-year term and 1 full-time recovery project manager position on a 1-year term. The alternatives, of course, Council approve the establishment of a smaller number of positions or of course, not approve any. The background you will see is very similar to the background that you received for the last request for positions. The wildfire, of course, as we all know, July 24th, and the information regarding the Joint Recovery Coordination Center, the Disaster Recovery Program, a conditional grant from Government of Alberta, and of course, the funding share of 90% of eligible costs, and the municipality would be responsible for the remaining 10. In the discussion, the municipality and Jasper National Park have entered in the recovery phase of the fire event. Recovery is understood to encompass the processes of returning residents to the community, ensuring essential services, managing environmental remediation, planning for reconstruction, building in future resiliency, and promoting social and economic recovery. Again, given the extent of the damage to the community and the park, the recovery efforts will be complex and multifaceted. The multidisciplinary team in the JRCC will be working to support the development or the recovery of the community. The JRCC has just completed its first month of operations, and during this period, the primary areas of focus have been to facilitate the return of residents, secure temporary accommodation for essential workers and vulnerable community members, mitigate life safety and public health hazards, develop interim housing plan, prepare debris removal and redevelopment processes, and build out the teams and structures required to implement the full scope of recovery work. The initial request for JRCC positions supported by the municipality was approved on September 3rd and actually just amended. In addition to technical conditions, Park Canada has also been supporting the JRCC with considerable administrative and logistical resources. As the full extent of the impact on the community has become more clear, the understanding of the scope of work required to facilitate has evolved. The need for some additional positions has been identified. So the outreach office, and I'll speak directly to the community outreach services part of this request, and then Director Fark will speak to the project management, and then we'll wrap. But since reopening after the fire on September 9th, outreach has seen a massive increase in the number of new clients, as well as the number of existing clients reaching out for support. In a typical month pre-wildfire, costs would see roughly 125 clients in total, 8 of whom would be new clients, which breaks down to 30 clients a week with 2 new clients within that 30. In the first week between September 9th and 13th, outreach saw 224 clients, 88 of which were new. This level of casework does not allow the existing cost team to successfully meet the increased needs of residents due to the wildfire, nor does it allow costs to meet the program contract outcomes of the many funders that we do have for our existing outreach team. We know that the spike in intakes will level to some extent. However, workers are noting a range of very complex social challenges, including but not limited to substance abuse, domestic violence, homelessness, financial instability, and that will likely increase in intensity and complexity in the immediate months to come before folks can find a degree of stability with housing. Not all new clients will become regular ongoing clients, but a portion will, and we estimate that a good 20% of those clients will become ongoing clients of cost. And I'll hand it over. Well, perhaps does council wish to ask questions directly related to that section before I hand it over to Director Funk?
Thank you for that, Director Reed. Go ahead, Councillor Wilson.
Yeah, Director Reed did answer a bit of my question, and my concern was that will this workload continue over 2 years? Would it not be best to do 1-year terms and then extend if needed? Like, I know definitely a ton of work happening right now because people have just moved back to the community, and over the next year, I feel that these positions will most likely be necessary. But is it necessary to sign on for 2-year terms right now, or 1-year terms and then extend if needed? I guess the second question that goes along with it is, have we filled the positions that we originally thought would help alleviate the workload in the in costs, and which positions, I guess, from the original list would have been the ones that assisted in this area?
Thank you, Your Worship, through to Councillor Wilson, Council. So in the original request, there's the social recovery position. That position is coordinating community events and community response, and so is not doing outreach. And so this is entirely a different part of recovery. This is to meet the immediate needs in that very much vulnerability, emergency situations, and coordinating all of the resources that may be available and getting them to the people so that the people can be successful in their recovery efforts in our community, thus making the community recovery successful. And so why we've requested 2 years is the research, of course, that we've done in previous incidents. This is optimistic to hope that it would end within a year. We definitely can see from previous events that this is more than a year of a commitment that we'd like to make. And secondly, we know that it will be difficult to bring someone to the community with this level of skill that we're looking for. And should we need to bring someone, a 2-year term gives them enough certainty to say the commitment is worth joining us on the team. So from the research in the past, we believe 2 years may extend to 3, rather than 1 year that may extend to 1.5 years. So that's the research part of this. And then the second part is we do want to attract high quality staff to be able to meet the needs of this very challenging aspect of our recovery. And so a 2-year term will help us to attract that quality kind of person. Did I answer those questions?
You did, thank you. And if I may, Mayor Ireland, just to continue a little bit, thank you, Director Reed. My other concern is that the need for these services is exacerbated by the fact that we have not delivered on, and no fault to anyone, but we have not delivered on any solution to interim housing. So, I would hope that we could have a bit of an update in that regard, knowing that I think there's a lot of this, cost responses because people are not home or are displaced. And so, yes, these positions are needed, but also housing is needed. And I think that they kind of play into each other. And I know, of course, you guys know this, and but just to ask a question in public and find out, where we're at with housing, because these positions are needed, partly because of it.
And I see Director Fark has his camera on. I'll certainly defer to him for the housing discussion.
Thank you, Director Reed and Councillor Wilson. So the housing situation obviously is quite complicated and complex. We are working very closely with all the partners at Parks Canada and the Government of Alberta to advance as quickly as possible interim housing. But I think as council and the community understands, it's not like there was a large inventory of readily and completely serviced land available for the purposes of interim housing. So we're having to go through a process that includes identifying appropriate sites, identifying the servicing needs, doing the servicing design, working with our partners in the higher levels of government to understand what the funding model is, the prioritization for housing, and essentially understanding from the market what type of housing could be available. Unfortunately, all of those initiatives do take time. We are working at the absolute maximum pace possible, and we are hoping to have information and updates for the community as soon as we are able to in the coming weeks to answer the housing question. We know it is a point of serious concern and anxiety for residents, and it is our #1 priority and occupation at the moment. So we hope to have updates very soon, and a number of initiatives are working simultaneously to find solutions.
And if I may just jump on to supplement, the housing is definitely a very large portion of our recovery efforts and what we are seeing. But as I mentioned in the write-up, these are complex, multifaceted social conditions. And so housing will not necessarily solve isolation or necessarily solve substance abuse challenges that have arisen or mental health and family violence. A house is very important. It is also only one part of the needs that people have in these complex social challenges we're seeing in our office. And as far as the workload, I think I would be remiss if I didn't mention that, you know, what we are seeing is last week, a 500% increase. We reasonably think that 20% increase is a long-term baseline that we think, and that's what we're requesting, workers to respond to only a 20% increase in our current outreach team's workload. And so I don't think we are overstaffing this by any stretch, but I do think we are appropriately or right-sizing this request.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson, and thank you both, Director Reid and Director Fark. Councillor Waxer.
I would just like to speak in favor of the 2-year period, given the level of trauma that we're seeing in so many of the residents. And I believe that trauma really impacts people's ability to cope with situations. And while we may in a year have interim housing and some of the immediate problems may be solved, but we may see that people are having difficulty maintaining a normal work schedule. They may be just not sleeping. There may be all kinds of other challenges that I think having an expanded outreach complement will really assist people in reaching out to get the assistance they may require. And it will also, I think, provide for us a really good measure of what the issues are in the community. We've got a local way of collecting the information of what people are experiencing and the resources that are required.
Thank you, Councillor Waxer. Go ahead, Councillor Kelleher-MP.
Thank you, Mayor, and through you to Director Reid. I'm curious, Director Reid, this increase of work, is this from workers returning to town, or are we also dealing with workers that are in communities like Edmonton, Hinton, Calgary?
Thank you, Mayor Allen, through to Councillor Kelleher-MP. It is a blend. There are certainly some supports we are giving to clients that we have had on our client load from a distance, and also new clients in town. We're seeing a roughly 80% in town, 20% out of town ratio right now. And you know, as recovery efforts and housing gets sorted, we do expect that to become 100%, but we're already at 80% of the clients are in person in town.
Thank you for that, Director Reid.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Demota.
Thank you, Worship. I think just one of the comments that I want to make here is more from a fiscal point. And, you know, there are residents in the community that are aware of the need of these new positions. And I'm talking about all of them that have been added for recovery. And, you know, I don't want to say it's the elephant in the room, but I think that there's a general and justifiable concern and anxiety with the additional 10% burden put on the current tax base. And we don't have the numbers in front of us in every area on what that looks like. So I understand that, you know, these are important positions to add. You know, unfortunately, we don't have those numbers in front of us. And, you know, I think, I don't want to say that those 10% are compounding, but it's going to have an overall impact when we get to budget time and we see the real numbers. And I just want to emphasize that there is a general concern out there on what that's actually going to mean. And on future precedent with other emergencies within the province, my understanding is that there was full support on this. And now, because of a change in legislation, you know, with our small community here and our ability to get revenue is change that has changed, and it's limited. And to me, I know that we're going to be seeking other areas to try to make up that 10%, but the reality is right now it's not there, and people are very concerned about that. So, you know, when we're talking about these things, I think it's important to address that, and we need to know pretty soon what that's going to look like. And I don't want to put any more burden on administration, but these are genuine concerns that I think that need to be talked about in public. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Demota. And just to be clear, I appreciate that you're asking your question at this time, and it's appropriate, but we are so far just discussing the cost positions. Also, in the request is the project management that is not under cost, but certainly the costs are appropriate discussion. Councillor Keller-Renty.
Thank you, Mayor Ireland. Are you confident, Director Reid, that we're going to get funding for these positions from the Disaster Recovery Fund from Alberta? And I'm kind of curious, has the others positions been approved by this fund?
Mayor, and through to Councillor Kelleher MP, two things. One, I'm ever the optimist, and so I have high confidence in the team in the JRCC led by Director Fark, and I would hand it over to him because he will have a far more nuanced view of this and up-to-date view.
Thank you, Director Reid, and Council for the question. So we have already been in communication with DRP. We are providing them a list of all of the positions that we are incorporating as part of the recovery office. And we have submitted a budget to them, or a DRP grant request to them that includes the financial ask for these positions. Pending the outcome of the decision by council at this meeting, my intention is to go to DRP with a finalized list, including the job descriptions for all of the approved positions. Of course, transparency with our funding partners is important, and also assurance that that we have their approval, and that these are identified as eligible expenses. So that is the process that I am following, and have been following up until now. So DRP has been fully aware of the positions that we have brought on to date, and that would be the intent to continue in that way. And if we have an indication from DRP that some positions will not be eligible, then, as previously indicated in the last report, we would come back to council with that indication for further direction before moving forward with recruitment of any positions.
Thank you, Director Fark and Director Reid. Are there other questions for Director Reid before I turn to Director Fark for the other position? If not, I have just one question for Director Reed. My understanding is that typically the costs workers are segmented by age. So for the proposed new positions, would they be assigned to a particular age group, or would they be, in some sense, rovers?
Mayor Ireland, your awareness of our operation is of course wonderful, and we do appreciate that you know so much about how we work. And so you're correct, our normal outreach team is broken by age demographics and or settlement for our newcomers. These workers would be, we would call them umbrella. They will be focused on wildfire. They will, of course, use and be part of the team. And so if it was a family issue specific about wildfire and that is a new client, it may stay with the wildfire team of outreach. But the team itself is so collaborative, and they will consult with each other, and our client support coordinator, Anna, will make sure that the right person's doing the right case as we go along. But they will not be designated as wildfire adult or wildfire family. They will be wildfire responders. Well, that's not an accurate way of saying that. They will be outreach team supporting the specifics of wildfire effort, of wildfire recovery. There, that's the right way to say that.
Perfect. Thank you very much for that. If there are no further questions then with respect to the additional proposed cost workers, I will turn to Director Fark to discuss the other position that's requested.
Thank you, Mayor Ireland. Very, very briefly, as indicated, so there is an intense amount of work that is going on currently on a number of different files, including the debris management and waste removal file, and of course the interim housing file. There are a number of complex projects within each of those files that need to be actioned simultaneously, and we are finding that there is a need for additional project management capacity and support in order to be able to move forward with those effectively. With this position, we are, to Deputy Mayor Demoto's point, only requesting a one-year term, because we believe that the heavy lift for this position is in the first year. And then after that time, the requirement for that additional support will lessen, and a single project manager on the 2-year term should be able to manage the balance of the work. But for this, especially this intensive period, we do require additional resources. I would also like to just clarify one point, which is under the financial considerations. I apologize for this, the late editing on the weekend. The number that was included there, the $650K as the total cost, actually also included the assumption of a dedicated small business support person on a 2-year term, because I had originally included in the report the inclusion of that position. And then in discussion with CAO, given we took that component out because it was being addressed in another way by council, with council. However, it is important for council to be aware that that position also comes with costs. So the 650 estimated cost there is meant for the 2-year terms for both the cost positions, a 1-year term for the project manager position, and it also included at that time a 2-year cost for the small business support. So the actual cost for just the positions requested in this report will be less, somewhere between 450 and 500K.
Thank you for that report, Director Fark. Are there questions of council for Director Fark? Right. Seeing none, I do thank you for clarifying the financial aspect. Is there a councillor prepared to make a motion with respect to the request, which I think is to add the 2 cost positions for a 2-year term and the 1 project management position for a 1-year term, but subject to all of those positions being eligible under the DRP? Councillor Waxer?
Yes, I'll make that motion.
Thank you for that. Is there any debate on the matter, or is there a councillor that wishes to speak to the motion? I'm starting with Councillor Waxer.
No, I think that a lot of effort and thought and concern has gone into to developing these recommendations, and moving forward is critical for the health and well-being of our community. So with that, I am happy to make that motion.
Thank you, Councillor Waxer. I see no other hands up. I will then call the question. All those in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried. Thank you both, Director Fark and Director Reid, for bringing that forward. That takes us to the, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead, Councillor Wilson.
Sorry, just a question on the, and I'm sorry, I'm fitting it in here, but the previous agenda item, how many of those positions have been filled, if any? I guess it's to Director Fark.
So to date, the social housing the housing and social recovery manager position has been filled. That was with an internal candidate that was already within the MOJ. And we have one of the project manager positions filled. The remaining positions are still being advertised as we speak. And we are looking to have those filled in short order, hopefully sometime next week.
And could you comment on where they're being advertised? Just because I know there's a media on here as well, just to get the biggest exposure.
Sure. So all of the standard MOJ advertising channels. So on our website, across our social media, through the job center, and posted in all of the municipal facilities.
Deputy Mayor Demota.
Thank you. Just to clarify on one of the comments made by Director Fark through you, Your Worship, the statement about one of the positions being filled internally, is that because a position wasn't available, or is this person having a dual role now?
So the person was previously the national immigration settlement coordinator or manager, I believe was his title. I'm sorry, I don't know the exact phrase of his title. So he was integrated with the MOJ, but he was not MOJ specific staff. So he was working on a national program hosted or housed within the MOJ. And there has been a secondment to backfill his position from his funding organization that has allowed him to be freed up, as he is a Jasper resident and he knows Jasper quite well, and he had the skill set required. So he has moved into the JRCC and his position has been backfilled by his funding organization.
That's great. And if that was clarified before, I apologize, but I appreciate that clarity. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm trying to get us back onto our agenda so we can discuss items that are actually there, but I see CAO Given has his hand up. So go ahead, Mr. Given.
Thanks, Your Worship. I just wanted to say administration strategy in filling these positions as quickly as possible is to first, certainly we're accepting candidates from anywhere. And if we have qualified internal candidates that apply, that allows us to fill it quite rapidly. That does mean that we have to start to backfill in the organization. And so the position we just heard about was a little bit different in that organization didn't have a direct impact on MOJ operations. There may be others that we have to fill, but certainly we're looking for good qualified people. If they happen to come from our organization and they can step up into these roles and we can backfill their roles, that's great. But if there are other people out in the community of Jasper that are looking for new opportunities, we obviously offer a pretty wide variety of some very exciting opportunities to contribute to the community. We certainly like to hear from those folks as well.
Thank you, Mr. Given, and thank you, Councillor Wilson, for raising that. I will now turn to the additional item on our agenda, one of the two, agenda item 5.3, raised by Councillor Hall. So I will turn to Councillor Hall to introduce that item.
Thank you, Mayor Ireland. I'm hoping that Director Fark, you may be able to provide us an update on debris removal, your latest from Ellis Don. I'm hearing concerns from residents around the cost, as it does fall on, it's the responsibility of the owner of the destroyed property, and that they may not be willing to sign anything until they know how much it's going to be. I'm wondering if you're able to just provide us with an update, please.
Certainly. Thank you, Councillor Hall. So again, the long and the short of it is, like everything that we're having to deal with, it is complicated. So the process that we have had to go through for the debris removal is, first and foremost, we needed a debris management plan approved by Parks Canada. And given the volume of debris that we're going to be dealing with, the nature of the debris, including the risk of hazardous materials, and the need to ensure that the management plan included not just the removal, but then the transport and the disposal of the debris in a validated landfill site, the putting together of that plan has been complex. So before we could take any additional steps, the first thing we needed to do was to have the clear plan. And to be clear, everybody must adhere and follow this waste management plan. So regardless of who the contractor is or who the homeowner is, because the plan includes details around requirements, for example, on the management of hazardous materials, on adhering to ONH&S requirements, on air quality monitoring because of the risk of hazardous materials. So they are quite comprehensive and complex requirements that form part of any demolition permit that will be provided. So the first step in the process was getting this plan in place and a permit process in place so that people can apply to have the debris removed. So a permit process is now in place. Parks Canada has agreed to essentially do large-scale permitting rather than individual site permitting. This is a significant win for the community. It will expedite the process considerably and allow us to move that forward. So, but there are conditions of the permits that have to be met, and some of those conditions are, for example, to meet that waste management plan. Mayor Ireland, I see Deputy Mayor Demoto has his hand up. Is the preference to answer questions as we go along, or to complete, please?
The preference is have you complete your report, and then I will turn to councillors for questions.
Okay, thank you. So now that the waste management plan is in place, Ellis Don as prime contractor, or the soon-to-be designated prime contractor that is working with the Insurance Bureau of Canada, they've been able to use that because now they know what the technical requirements will be for the debris removal. They have now gone out to market to tender for vendors to actually complete that work. They were not able to do that until they had the management plan in place, so they could see what the technical requirements for the work would be, so people could scope the work and price the work accordingly. Those tenders are out to the public currently. There's a relatively short turnaround period. We are expecting those tenders to close by the end of this coming week. And therefore, at that point, we will have a better idea of what the pricing will look like for Ellis Don. And to be clear, the IBC, the Insurance Bureau of Canada, is working to consolidate and bring as many of the insurance companies together. And they have agreed to work with Ellis Don as their prime contractor to do mass remediation and debris removal. This has been proven to be a very cost-effective method. The similar method was applied, for example, in Slave Lake. We are working with IBC, the Insurance Bureau of Canada, to actually get some more information out to the public, because we realize that these concerns are coming and these questions are being asked. So, but the evidence is there that cooperating collectively on debris removal will be more cost-effective than individual homeowners attempting to remediate and remove the debris on their individual sites. And even if individual homeowners wish to work with their insurance companies to manage their sites independently, they are still required to follow the same debris management plan as everybody else. Those will be conditions of their permits. So we should have some pricing relatively soon, hopefully early next week. We'll have some additional information out to the public on what that pricing looks like and what that process looks like, together working with the Insurance Bureau of Canada. One of the things that has been causing some concern within the community is that community members are being asked to sign release forms in order to allow them to sign on to this process. We understand that there's concern about signing those releases before they have a full understanding of cost. We understand that. We will get that information as quickly as we can. And to be clear, there are two separate releases. One is essentially to Parks Canada, indicating that people have understood the conditions of the permitting and are agreeing to abide by it. And the second one is essentially to allow their insurance company to assign Ellis Don as the prime contractor so they can do the mass site removal. I believe that that's probably the best place to stop there, and then I can respond to any additional questions that may come up.
Thank you for that. Yeah, thank you, Director Park, and I will let Councillor Hall proceed with her question as she added the item, and then I'll turn to you, Deputy Mayor Demota.
Thank you, Mayor Ireland. Thank you very much, Director Park. My next question would be, do the release forms, so there'll be one for Parks and one for your insurance company, are residents expected to wait till your insurance company reaches out? Are we supposed to find these forms? There is confusion around that as well, and I do appreciate that there'll be more information coming out. And thank you for your answering these questions today.
Yeah, thank you. And we realized actually, and we appreciate the fact that Council has raised this concern to us, because we realized that there was a disconnect between IBC and some of the individual insurance adjusters. So we are now taking steps to address that, to make sure that IBC is communicating clearly with their adjusters, so that the adjusters are fully aware of the process, and that they themselves can also then communicate effectively with the residents. So there will be more information that will come out on that. But yes, we are addressing that communication gap.
Thank you for that, Deputy Mayor Demota.
Yeah, most of the stuff, I'm glad that I waited, was answered there. I think the initial shock was that when residents received the release, was that initially the way it was presented from IBC, that there was a collective understanding and that the work was going to get remediated. It's going to be done through Ellis Don. But then when they got the information in front of them, it said that the leaseholder is the client and not the insurance company. Totally understandable why that's written that way, but I don't think that people understood that initially. So there's that shock. And then because there is no cost involved in it, there's an apprehension to move forward. And I think it's fully understandable. You've, Director Fark has explained all that, but I just, wanted to iterate that there's still some concern on that, and I don't think the shock's gone away from everyone.
Mayor Ireland, if I could respond to that in addition. So on the question of cost, we understand that it is a big concern within the community, that there are a number of residents who will receive sort of a total payout from their insurance company, and any costs that they incur will be deducted from that. So it's not that there will be a specific allocation for the debris removal. So we understand the sensitivity around cost. We also understand that there may have been some discussion within the community of, other potential contractors indicating that they believe they can do the work in a less expensive way. Without knowing what the costs of Ellis Don are, of course, it's difficult to speculate as to the accuracy of that. Again, the evidence from Slave Lake has indicated that the mass debris removal is actually the most cost-effective way to approach this. And again, to be clear, anybody who's engaged in the debris removal has to follow the same debris removal process and management plan that Ellis Don will have to follow. That includes the opinion of a qualified engineer to ensure stability of the site. And I know there have been questions around the requirement to backfill as well. So essentially, the requirement to backfill is determined by a qualified engineer to ensure stability of the site and no impact on adjacent properties. And so anybody who goes through the process needs to follow those same steps.
If I could follow up, then thank you very much, Director Park. Yeah, I think some of the feedback that I've been getting is that the fear of the insurance not being able to cover the full cost, because some of the numbers that are floating out there are astronomical, like $500,000 per lot, and it might take some time because of the amount of properties that are needing to be taken care of. The fear is that if the gap between what insurance is willing to cover, people are fearful of being out of pocket for the extra expenses, and I think that's where a lot of the issues lie.
Yeah, and thank you for that, Deputy Mayor Demoto. The number that you've suggested is purely speculative, and I don't believe it is in any way connected to what the real costs will be. They will be substantially orders of magnitude less expensive than that per lot. Of that, we are certain. We understand the concerns around costs. We will go through a process to provide information to residents so that they can make informed decisions. What they have to understand is that there are certain costs that are going to be incurred in any event, regardless of whether it's Ellis Dawn or whether they contract independently. But again, if they contract independently with their insurance company, they are required to identify a company that is able to take on prime contractor responsibility for their site, that will meet all of the technical requirements and will be held to the same standard as Ellis Dawn. So this is why I understand that the absence of information has fueled some of this speculation and some of this anxiety, and we are taking steps to address that as quickly as we can, and to allow residents to make an informed decision based on an actual understanding of costs.
Thank you, and I know that puts you in a difficult position, but I appreciate the level of clarity again with that. I thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead, Councillor Wilson.
So I'll step lightly because I know this at risk of being like the councillor telling the snowplow operator how to operate the snowplow, because I know the JRCC is looking at all options available for debris removal cleanup. But speaking as a member of the construction industry in Jasper, I want to ask, has there been any consideration on minimizing trucking? The trucking is going to be very, very expensive, and I think that's like one of the largest things cost to the debris removal. Has there been some consideration about crushing concrete at say the local Marmot pit or any of the other locations that might be available, and using that as backfill? Because there has been some speculation that the backfill will be brought in from out of the community, which their closest community is Hinton, and that's a lot of trucking and a lot of extra costs. And again, trucking all the concrete out, which wouldn't be asbestos containing. Is there a possibility to crush that locally and use that as backfill? And from what you had said earlier, Director Fark, it may not be necessary to completely backfill foundations. It's just making them safe, like tapered banks and that type of thing. As an engineer would approve of being made safe, because again, then if we're filling those foundations only to remove them in the spring, well, again, that's added cost. And I know that the JRCC has looked into a lot of this, but I just wanted to ask the question in public. And I guess my final question is that waste management plan, debris removal plan made public? And if so, where could we find that?
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. I'll try to answer the questions that I recorded there. So on your first question around crushing, yes, that is absolutely being explored. We are looking at opportunities to essentially maintain in close proximity to Jasper as much of the material as is realistic and feasible possible to do so, including looking at crushing operations and reusing that material. So yes, that has been part of the conversation that is being explored. We do understand the high cost of trucking. We have looked at what the alternatives to that could be. Unfortunately, rail is not an available or feasible alternative to trucking due to loading and unloading facilities downstream. And the coordination of the trucking and the permitting of the trucking is something that we are also taking steps to manage. The landfill that we have identified also currently has a limit of the number of tips they're able to take on a daily basis and the volume. So we're working with them to expand that in order to expedite the trucking and the debris removal. So yes, all of those complex components have been incorporated and considered and are forming part of the discussion. In terms of your question around backfill, yes, there is. So essentially the long and the short of it is a qualified engineer needs to ascertain that the site meets the requirements of the permit And so there could be a number of ways to achieve that. And total backfill, you're correct, may not be required. However, there are other considerations that will factor into cost. A non-backfilled site will likely require fencing to be retained over the course of the construction or the period before construction commences while there is still an open excavation. Responsibility for fencing costs will transfer to the property owners and the prime contractors for each site once they take on that responsibility. So it's currently being managed by the municipality, but that will be transferred or transitioned once the work actually begins. So there'll be some additional costs there. And there's also some potential implications around, the soil conditions, soil erosion, and the implications for that for the pouring of footings and eventual reconstruction. So all of those things are to be considered by the homeowners in discussions with their insurance and whoever they identify as their contractor. So we are not prescribing what the solution has to be. What is prescribed is the process that people have to follow in order to determine and ensure that their site is safe and meets the requirements of the permit. On the last question in regards to the waste management plan being public, I don't have an answer to that at this particular moment. I will go back to my colleagues at Parks Canada and get a confirmation of whether that document has been made public or not, and I will return to council with that information.
Go ahead, Councillor Wilson.
Great. Thank you very much, Director Fark. You answered all my questions. I'm glad you spoke to everything that I addressed. And just to throw it out there, because we're having the conversation about local solutions. I know this is way down the line, but during the rebuild, again, having to do with trucking and stockpiling material, could we look at having local stockpile locations in the larger affected areas? So meaning that, when we're digging basements, we don't have to truck it to Marmot Pit, or we don't have to truck it to, we can stockpile and then use as backfill. So just to minimize costs in the rebuild as well. Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. We will look at stockpiling options as well as staging and lay down options on sort of a larger scale basis. That is one of the big advantages of approaching this collectively rather than on a lot by lot basis, is it allows us to do that. If it's managed on a lot by lot basis, then each individual property owner is essentially responsible for finding their own solutions to those problems. And then also, Councillor Wilson, on your point around local involvement, we want to make clear that Ellis Don has gone out to vendors. I believe there's a strong encouragement for vendors within the community who have the capacity and the equipment to be able to participate, to apply for that process. We would like to make use of the resources within our community as much as possible. So we are encouraging, obviously, all the companies within Jasper who would like to participate to go through that process. Both for the debris removal, but then also for the eventual reconstruction process.
Thank you for that. Councillor Hall, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Ireland. I have just two more very quick questions for Director Fark. The first around mass removal. Will it be a one price for all? Will there be different prices for different lot sizes? My second question is for residents who may face challenges with their insurance policies. Will there be options for any kind of financial aid?
So on the first question, I actually do not know the answer to that. It is being managed by the IBC in cooperation with the insurance companies. My understanding is that although they are doing collective permits and collective removal, they are requiring a site-by-site report. And so how exactly that will relate to the costing assigned to the sites is something that the IBC is taking the lead on. I can attempt to get an answer back for you on that. And then, I'm sorry, your second question again was?
Around financial aid options for residents who might face some limitations in their insurance policies.
So part of the positions that we are attempting to recruit, including the economic and social recovery coordinator positions, would be to identify what the options for additional supports could be and to support residents in going through that. So unfortunately, we haven't had the resources up until this point to identify what those additional supports could be. As soon as we get the people in place, that would be the part of the work that they will pursue.
Thank you. And just to follow up on my first question around site by site is great. I only asked this because of the 25 or so mobile homes in the trailer park that don't have basements. That would definitely change the cost of a debris removal on that lot.
Yeah, in that case, I do believe that the removal cost will be tailored, but I will get a response and further information on that.
Thank you all for those questions. Go ahead, Deputy Mayor Demota.
Yeah, just out of curiosity, and again, if there's repetition caused by my question, I apologize. Just the opportunity, is there any cost recovery opportunity for salvaging metal that's left over in the debris? And although minimal, you know, there's I guess obligation to you know, environmental responsibility. Do we have any initiative that might come forward with that?
So my understanding is we did look at the possibility of recycling certain materials that come out of the sites. However, the complexities of doing the recycling, both extricating the specific materials and then remediating them for potential contamination, what the cost of doing so far exceeded any potential salvage value from those materials. And so that has been explored, and my understanding is that the decision was made based on a cost analysis and complexity analysis. It would also significantly increase the complexity of the removal and waste management operation. My understanding is that the decision was made not to proceed in that way.
Okay, that makes sense. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Director Fark, in the absence of other questions, I have a couple for you. Firstly, can you confirm that this entire discussion about debris removal and the coordination between IBC and the various insurance companies, and I think somebody on behalf of potentially of uninsured properties as well, all relates to residential properties and does not involve commercial properties?
That is correct. And I would add further to that, to your point on the uninsured properties, my understanding is that the Red Cross is stepping in and cooperating with IBC to ensure that the uninsured properties have their debris removal costs covered.
Thank you for that. And the other question, you have said a couple of times that the experience from Slave Lake provides evidence that mass debris removal is more cost effective than individual sites. Are those numbers available somewhere? If people were interested, could they do the comparison, and could you direct us to where they might find that information?
So we have made a request to IBC to furnish support for the cost effectiveness of mass removal, and we are working with them to get that information and make it available to the public.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Any other questions for Director Fark on this important topic? I see no other hands. Thank you again, Councillor Hall, for raising it and adding it to the agenda. And we will look forward to further information being made available as it becomes available. Deputy Mayor Demota.
Yeah, just to follow up on all that, and it's not to give any direction right now. It's just on those conversations and talking to people who are looking at rebuilding, just the process right now, that everybody's at a different stage depending on what their lot is like and where it is. But I went on our website, and the information that's there is very good. I think people are looking for a little bit more clarity, and you know, somebody made the reference to like having a bulletin board and all the things that you kind of need to go and do. And I realized that in order to get you know, your insurance to do work, you need to have your plans, and then to get the permit, like there's all these steps, but there's still a little bit of confusion on, you know, understanding the steps. And I still get asked, and I've been referring people to the website. Unfortunately, it's not able to answer all the questions. I don't have all the questions that were asked in front of me, but you know, I appreciate the work that's being done, and every week there seems to be new elements there. And I just try to encourage everybody to go to our municipal website and look at the information that's there. And if there are any concerns, there are emails that hopefully get answered when people reach out. Thank you.
Thank you for that. If we are concluded then with agenda item 5.3, we can move to agenda item 6, which is the motion action list, a copy of which is appended to the agenda. CAO given.
Thanks, Your Worship. There are just 2 items that we're recommending for removal because they've been dealt with on previous council agendas. That's the financial relief recommendations from August 13th. Administration had presented that. Council endorsed the recommendation about some financial relief subject to Government of Alberta support to enable the municipality to do that. So we'll wait to hear back from GOA on that. But that item has been dealt with. And then the council remuneration review, that report was delivered. Administration has launched a public engagement opportunity using the municipality's Engage Jasper platform. So that's been promoted on our website, and we'll do some more promotion of it. But certainly if council members want to refer residents to Engage Jasper, they can review some documentation related to council remuneration. Of course, remembering that this is all for the council pay following the 2025 election. But in any case, that agenda item has been dealt with and could be removed. You'll see that there is one new item that's been added to the list, the parcel CH access road and Spruce Avenue development tender, the local improvement levy. And so we will be doing that over the coming months. I think at this time, we would probably set that as a December 2024 process. But other than that, that's all of the items that we wanted to recommend that council amend or modify on the motion action list. And we're happy to have any discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Given. Is there any discussion or questions for Mr. Given from councillors? If not, I would look for a motion to have council approve the changes to the motion action list as presented. Councillor Keller-Hrampe, thank you. I see no hands for questions. I will call the question. All those in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried. Agenda item 7, notices of motion. There are none of which I am aware. Councillor reports. Agenda item 8, are there any reports? Go ahead, Councillor Keller-Hrampe.
I just want to let council know that our residents are returning at Alpine Summit this week. Some arrived yesterday, today, and tomorrow. So the senior family will be back together by the end of the week.
Good news indeed. Thank you, Councillor Keller-Hrampe, for that report. If there are no further reports, agenda item 9.1, upcoming events. The Alberta Municipalities Association Convention starts today. I know that many are intending to travel there. National Day for Truth and Reconciliation will be honored on September 30th. Again, our typical program in commemoration park will not occur this year. We have our organizational meeting October 22nd. Are there any other upcoming events of which councillors should be made aware? Councillor Keller-Hrampe.
I believe October and the presentation to Mrs. Padlov from the Chamber of Commerce.
Thank you for that reminder. Indeed. All right, that takes us to the added agenda item 9.2, an in-camera item requested by administration relating to land, which is covered under the FOIP legislation. Mr. Given, can I just confirm with you that once we emerge from the closed session back into open session, there will be nothing arising from this particular in-camera discussion, and we will just adjourn the meeting?
Your worship, that's correct. This is to provide an update to council on a matter, and there's no decision-making required.
Thank you very much for that. I will then bid adieu to all of those who have joined us live today on our Zoom platform. Thank you for your interest. We will very shortly go in camera, and when we emerge or re-emerge, it will be for the purposes of adjournment of this regular meeting only. So there will be no further business conducted today. So enjoy your day. And I will ask any councillor now to make a motion that council move in camera at 10:36 a.m. Councillor Hall, thank you for that. All those in favor? There are none opposed. We will move in camera. I think we have a separate link for that, so I will invite everyone just to disengage from this and join the link that was shared earlier this morning. And we will see you there very shortly.